Good evening. My name is Rob Rosine, and I'm a Public Information Officer for CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3. Thank you for joining us for this evening's Dixie Fire West Zone Community Briefing for August 24th. If you have any questions for our speakers this evening, please submit them in the comment section below, and we will address them after our speakers' presentations. First, I'd like to take a look across California. Our state is under extreme drought conditions, and wildfires are burning rapidly and with extreme severity. More than 14,000 federal, state, and tribal and local firefighters are assigned to 12 active large wildfires across the state. Our air assets have dropped more than 10 million gallons of retardant so far this year. In 2021, there have been more than 6,700 wildfires, which have burned nearly 1.6 million acres. The amount of acres burned in California this year is larger than Grand Canyon National Park. Taking a look at the Dixie Fire, we currently stand at 735,475 acres and are 43% contained. Currently deployed on the incident are 5,815 personnel, 483 fire engines, 195 dozers, 97 crews, and 19 helicopters. I'm also happy to report that the number of evacuated residents has been reduced to 2,732. Our first speaker this evening will be incident meteorologist Derek Williams.
Good evening. We've had a fairly steady state weather pattern for the last few days. We've had southwest winds pick up during the afternoon hours, and along the higher elevations, we've seen those winds gust to 20 to 25 miles an hour. We'll see that again tomorrow for Wednesday. Relative humidities will get down to around 15 to 20%. It's dry, but it's not extremely dry. We tend to get worried when it gets down to the single digits. So still dry, still some gusty winds tomorrow. From the southwest, we do have a trough, upper level trough moving onshore that will move onshore tonight and into Wednesday. And that'll keep those gusty winds up for tomorrow. And as we move into Wednesday night and Thursday, we will see those winds die down quite considerably, in fact. And high pressure starts to move back in Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We'll see a ramp up in temperatures. We've been seeing 70s and 80s for highs for the last few days, including on Wednesday for tomorrow. But we will start to see those temperatures ramp up later this week as that high pressure builds overhead. We will also see some drier conditions with those relative humidities coming down probably in the single digits by late this week. So something to keep an eye out on. The winds will be light, however. With that high pressure overhead, there's not going to be a whole lot of wind issues. We are looking at the possibility of northeast winds starting Friday or Saturday, but again, less than 10 miles an hour. Nothing to be concerned as of right now. With that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Fire Behavior Analyst Brian Newman.
Good evening. So over the fire every morning, we've been having a bit of smoke over the fire that's been settling in the canyons and really dampened down or moderated our fire behavior, and we expect that's going to happen again tomorrow. So today, as that wind had picked up and lifted that smoke out, we started seeing some activity across the fire. So we'll go over some of those places where we saw some of that. Down here in the Janesville area, this fire portion did have some interior activity, but it was all within the lines and nothing that challenged any of those control lines. But there's quite a bit of heavy fuels, especially on top of the escarpment and onto the west side of that continue to burn out today. Again, none of it's challenging the control lines, and expect to continue to see smoke in those areas for the next few days at the least while the crews work on all that. Coming over by to the area west of Susanville, what we're calling the Westwood sector, Hamilton Mountain, and that area, there is still some internal activity in there. There's some places where those heavy fuels continue to burn out and they continue to put up smoke columns, but again, nothing's challenging the lines. Expect to see that again tomorrow and the next few days as the wind picks up in the afternoon and gives that a little bit of fresh air and allows it to lift out that smoke and see that activity. So again, expect to see that across there. In the Mountain Meadows Reservoir area, we do have some smoldering areas out in the grass, and again, that's producing quite a bit of smoke. Not much fire activity per se, and it's not threatening any of the lines. So expect to see that again for the next few days at the least. Moving north out of westward on the 821 road, there are some interior pockets that continue to provide some heat. And as that wind comes up, especially off out of the lake, it allows those smoke columns to stand up a little bit and produce a little bit of fire activity. We have had some really short-range spotting there that have presented a little bit of issues, but we've been able to get a hold of those without any major concerns. So we expect that to continue for the next couple of days as we see that light breeze across the fire. Moving further north, Silver Lake area, again, interior islands are heating up. The wind's hitting some of those places as we get into the upper elevations and allowing that activity to pick up. Smoke columns coming up again, but again, in this area, we're not having any major challenges with the control lines. As we move further over to the west, they are doing some burning operations, especially in the evening, and just the amount of energy and heat left in there is producing quite a bit of smoke through the day and through the night, and expect that to continue as they continue that burning operation over the next few days or so. And then moving further into the park area, quite a bit of activity in there. It's moving at a steady pace in towards the old Reading fire scar. It is producing quite a bit of smoke columns, quite a bit of activity, and that's where you're going to see most of the smoke on the fire in the next handful of days. Coming further down the park road and into the mineral area, Mill Creek, there is some internal activity in the spot that went across the road about a week ago, but again, not threatening control lines, and it's just interior burning that is not any challenges to the line. And coming a little bit further to the east by the Guernsey area, there's some activity in there. Again, not threatening control lines, but expect to see smoke and some activity in those areas. And then coming further down to the south there into the Butte sector and all along this area further down here, just some minor internal smoldering, nothing of any seriousness. The biggest issues that we're seeing in there is those pine needles sitting over the stump holes and the burning logs that are left in there, producing some very small flames and a little bit of smoke, but nothing of any major concern to any of the control lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'd like to introduce Operations Section Chief Mark Brunton.
Good evening. So just take you through walkthrough of the overall fire. Middle of the fire is our Westwood section. From the west moving east, looking very good. Around the lake with the repopulation of the past few days, we've had some calls for service. And that's continuous, and that's something that's going to be occurring over the next number of days and weeks ahead with some of the heavier fuels that are still burning out, predominantly stump holes and such. So people will be seeing this, and we understand that there's cause for concern. However, we will assure that those are basically well into the burn, should not be a factor, but we will be providing calls for service to extinguish those. Moving east, we've got here where it says Duffy Group. We do have some red on the map, but that is slowly in the process of getting turned black as we're putting our control efforts and getting those lines in full control status and patrol status. This area just under the Duffy Group has been something we've been working at direct line on. Heavy fuels once again and heavy mop-up, so that's just going to be a work in progress in the coming days. Moving over here, Janesville. A couple of days ago, we called it the Battle of Janesville, and I think we've won that battle. We've had good success here stopping and progressing the fire into the community. We've been in the process of repopulating the community and working on all the control lines, widening those, improving those, mopping that up heavily. And in the next coming days, we're going to see that where there's going to be a lot more black line on that map. The Highway 395 corridor is looking very good. All the homes along that frontage, we're doing tactical patrol, mop up, and so forth. So very happy with what's going on out there in Janesville. Moving north of 36 into our Lassen sector. So as Chief Newman, our F-band, talked about, and I'll just reiterate this whole thing, in this pocket, again, really rough terrain, heavy fuels, got dozer line on that, hand line on that. We're putting hose line through there and plumbing that to do the mop-up stages. It's just going to be a work in progress. A lot of heavy fuels that are just going to take time for us to mop up. This little incursion from the spot fire a number of days ago, the Mill Creek Plateau, again, direct line on that. We have our containment lines, secondary, tertiary lines, so we don't anticipate any spread of this, and there is going to be some smoke off that. There is going to be some heavy smoke in the interior as some of this burns out as we are in the mop-up phase, and that's just going to be something that, of course, from those communities looking up on the mountain, you're going to see that. So just know that we have a lot of resources in there, and we're concentrating on that and getting that buttoned up in the coming days. As we move into the park, we had a few challenges today in Division Papa where we had some spotting conditions. Again, the fuels, as we've been saying time and again, very dry, very receptive to any sort of ember. So they've been working diligently in picking those up and working on that. That's just going to be an ongoing work in progress, just connecting all the dots with the different line within the park. Moving outside the park in Division Quebec, we've been doing a firing operation over the past couple days. We've had to stop that on a couple of occasions due to the weather conditions with the wind, challenging the lines. So this will be a long-term, multi-day project. When the conditions are right, we'll continue to connect that in. Once completed, that'll put close the door to any further fire movement towards the Highway 44 corridor or coming over into Shasta County. Speaking of which, just outside the park, we've been opening up the reading fire lines. One line is almost completely completed here. Very good line. It's going to do a lot to protect from any fire coming out of the park. We're also opening up some secondary lines, and so that's going to provide the community of Old Station a very good protection in multiple lines from any fire if it were to come out of the park. At this point in time, the fire's not having any sort of rapid movement or getting any head of steam to come out of the park, but that's just going to be something that's going to take us a number of days, if not a couple weeks, to get that fully buttoned up. It's going to be a long, painful process, but in the meantime, we are going to provide that protection in those areas. We are staffing those areas heavily with resource and equipment. As we have successes in another part of the fire, we're shifting those to our areas that are left and staffing that the best we can with what we have because we've had to share our resources with some of the other fires going on throughout the state. As we're seeing the success, we're having to share some of those resources. But the resource we have, these are our priorities and these are our targets. Moving down into Romeo and Tango, again, continuing the mop up in those heavy fuels. In the days to come, we're seeing more and more success with that. And we'll again concentrate to getting that all buttoned up in the coming days. We're flying aircraft with the better air conditions as far as we can do with our fixed wing, our rotor wing, as much as we possibly can to take care of our priorities that we've set. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'd like to introduce Lassen County Sheriff Dean Groudon.
All right, good evening, everyone. Fortunately, we've been able to transition most residential areas to warnings over the past few days. The only exceptions right now are the seasonal homes in the areas of Juniper Lake and Silver Lake. But for current evacuation and warning information and mapping, please log on to community.zonehaven.com. So for the people in those warning areas, I want you to still remain alert and make sure you have a plan ready in case warnings do have to be changed to orders again. So again, just be alert and make sure you have a plan just in case. Really tonight I want to take a few minutes just to thank a lot of our partners. CAL FIRE Team 3 has done a phenomenal job protecting our communities. There were a lot of tough firefights out there over the last few weeks. They've done a great job, and I really appreciate their efforts. I want to thank Chief Packwood and the staff at the CAL FIRE Lassen MODOC unit for their outstanding work, and obviously all the fire personnel working on this fire. I want to thank our local emergency services chief, Silas Rojas, who, he and I talk multiple times each day, but he serves as that conduit, between the sheriff's office, all the other county partners, and all, the fire teams, and he's done a great job on behalf of Lassen County. I want to thank our law enforcement partners and mutual aid units, some of our local law enforcement partners who we couldn't have done all this without, CDCR, U.S. Forest Service Law Enforcement, BLM, CHP, CAL FIRE Prevention, Lassen County Probation, and the Susanville Police Department. And of course, all the mutual aid units who came from all over Northern California to assist us here in Lassen County. I want to thank, the men and women of the Lassen County Sheriff's Office. They put in long hours for many weeks now, starting back with the Beckworth fire, from the dispatchers, the deputies, both corrections deputies and the patrol deputies, our civilian staff, everyone's pitched in and put in, an incredible amount of hours, working to protect the people of Lassen County. I couldn't be more proud of their efforts. And lastly, I want to thank the people of Lassen County for their ongoing support for all those personnel out there working on the fires and for each other. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Sheriff. Next, we have a video previously recorded this afternoon by Plumas National Forest Supervisor Chris Carlton.
Good evening. I'm Chris Carlton, Forest Supervisor here on the Plumas National Forest, with a brief update on the Dixie Fire and a couple of Plumas Forest-specific topics. First, I want to start by answering some questions around the forest closures that were recently implemented. As most of you are aware, a couple days ago, our regional forester, Jen Eberline, signed a closure order closing the northern 9 forests in our region to public access. That order is temporary through the 6th of September, and it's intended to keep people safe and reduce the number of people we have out there. Given all of the fire starts we have and the fire activity, we are very concerned about having people out there in remote locations on the forest, as well as the potential for fire starts. As everyone knows, our resources are already being highly taxed by these large fires that we have. And so the decision was made to issue that regional order. We're going to continuously assess, and as soon as it's safe to allow folks back out there, they're going to do that. And I know that being outdoors is a huge component of what we all love about this area. And I join you in hoping that they can change that soon. But until then, it's going to be in place for all of our safety. The second item is on our campgrounds. Because of that closure, the campgrounds are closed for public use. However, here on the Plumas, we are making 4 of them available for evacuees, and that's Meadow Camp, Deans Valley, Rock Creek, and Red Bridge. So if you are evacuated and want to be staying in one of those campgrounds, please contact the Forest Service here on the Plumas. We will work with you and get you a permit issued so that you can be in those campgrounds. We recognize there are a lot of folks in need who need a place to stay. These don't have a lot of amenities. They're very basic campgrounds, but they are an option for you. So thank you. Please continue sharing your questions and concerns, and we'll continue getting information back out to you. Have a safe evening. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Federal Agency Representative Jay Luscher.
Good evening. We'd also like to thank all of the folks that have come and helped out with this fire, whether it's folks that were out digging line, folks serving meals in camp, folks providing support to evacuees, or any kind of support across closing roadways, and all the infinite number of jobs that it takes to deal with a fire of this mass and magnitude. We've also had a question about the opening of the forest, specifically in the Feather River home site area. And just as Forest Supervisor Carlton said, it will be ongoing to evaluate when the forest will be open. Because of the dry conditions, the chance for another fire to start is very, very high. We want to prevent that and not have another fire start. It is for everyone's safety that the order has been put in place. We'll continue to evaluate that order after September 6th, and we'll update you as soon as we can. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'd like to introduce CAL FIRE Lassen MODOC Unit Chief Scott Packwood.
Good evening, Scott Packwood, Unit Chief Lassen MODOC. As Sheriff Grouden said, we've reduced many of the evacuation orders down to warnings, and that means citizens are returning to their communities and their neighborhoods or their homes out and within the fire area. So one of the things I'd like to talk about is when you do return to your home, you're going to see smokes and hot spots all within the fire perimeter. And they're going to continue to smoke for some time. So things to look for and watch out for, look for smokes in unburned areas, look for smokes around patches of green vegetation that did not burn completely and consume completely and are not completely black. Over the period of time, as the trees continue to be stressed by the fire and the drought, we're going to get needle cast, and those needles are going to land potentially on hot materials on the ground and can reignite, causing a low intensity fire. But you also look for trees with fire in hollowed out limb holes or root systems that have been burned out and the soils have been compromised and the fire got up into the root system. So as you return to your properties or you're driving through the fire perimeter along the roadways, look out for those things. Please be diligent about determining whether or not they're truly a threat before you call them in, so we're not senselessly responding out to smokes that are within the burn that are not a threat. But do call them in if you feel that it is necessary. And if you have local contact for your local fire department or district, you can call it that, or just use the normal 911 system and we'll direct resources to your location. So be prepared to give them a good location, what the fire's doing if it is flared back up. So every day that you're around your property, make a good assessment of what's going on. Examples of how long those smokes can linger. After last year's sheep and North Complex, we still had smokes popping up this spring up on the Diamond Mountain side and down within the Claremont and the Bear Fire. So many months after the fire had burned through, things start to dry out and you'll still have those smokes coming up out of the ground, out of the root systems, and deep within the interior of the fire. We don't have enough resources to mop the entire fire up 100% when we're doing a timber fire, so we're focusing on the perimeter and those areas that are a threat to perimeter spread. So again, if you have something pop up that appears to be a threat and looks like it's going to get reestablished and make some kind of a spread or forward progress, phone us, turn it in, call 911, and we'll respond out to it and take care of it. So be safe, watch out for those hazards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Our final speaker this evening will be Incident Commander Billy C.
Yeah, good evening. Obviously, you heard Chief Packwood talk about some of the conditions that you potentially will see over the coming months. We have over 5,000 firefighting personnel still on the ground. Obviously, there's numerous incidents throughout Northern California right now, and we continue to prioritize these incidents one by one. One of the key factors right now, we still have over 60 miles of fire line that we're actively engaged on perimeter control in the northern part up by Lassen National Park. As we continue to move through this process, we will continue to gain perimeter control, and we'll also continue to have firefighters patrolling and aggressively mopping up all the different areas that these smokes continue to challenge our lines and endanger your property. That's our number one goal, is to get your property as safe as possible. 733,000 acres. That's a large footprint on this landscape with heavy fuels conditions, and with the winds that we have day in, day out. We continue to find islands burning within our current perimeter that have a potential to challenge some of our control lines. Each day as these winds blow, as it heats up and the humidities drop, we continue to face challenges, and we continue to find success in overcoming those challenges. I assure you that we will maintain resources adequate to create the perimeter control and create the normalcy to get everyone home safe and move forward to the next phase of the recovery process. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Our first round of questions is going to be handled by Lassen County Sheriff Dean Groudon.
Okay, I've got a couple questions here. So the first one is, what is the plan to keep prisoners safe if the fire gets to Susanville, and an evac plan? So the prisons, based on their location, are very safe from this fire. In the Lassen County Jail, we did make preliminary plans in partnership with CDCR, State OES, Sacramento County Sheriff's Office, in case it became necessary to evacuate the jail. But based on the current situation, it doesn't appear that any of that is going to have to happen. The next questions Is Highway 36 open to go through from Chester to Susanville? Currently, Highway 36 is closed, so it's open between Chester and Westwood, but 36 is currently closed between Westwood and Susanville. So if you're trying to get from Chester to Susanville, you would travel 36 to Westwood, then you go north on County Road A21 to Highway 44, and then take Highway 44 east into Susanville. So there are a couple other questions about an estimate on Highway 36 opening west of Chester, and that one, and then also why are there still some warnings in Butte County? And really, so those, I just wanted to speak on behalf of all the counties that have been participating in meetings each day to discuss warnings and orders, and the California Highway Patrol is at all those meetings to talk about the highways and their status, and we're trying to reduce those, as soon as it's safe to, and open up the roadways when it's safe to. So I just want to assure everybody that representatives from, Butte, Plumas County, from the California Highway Patrol, they're all participating in those meetings. And if there are still warnings in those counties, there's a good reason for it, and they're not being ignored. They're being looked at each day. And the highway is the same thing. We're looking at, opportunities to open those when possible. But right now, as far as back to the estimate on Highway 36, I can't provide an estimate. I can just assure you that they're looking at it every single day to determine if it's safe to do so. And it will be open when it's determined it's safe to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. To handle our next round of questions, I'd like to invite back up Operations Section Chief Mark Brenton.
Okay, I've got a couple questions, specific areas regarding fire activity and such. So one of them is what's going on with the huge plume right now in Genesee. And Genesee is actually in the east zone, the community there. That's being handled by the Federal Incident Management Team. And we do get some updates and briefs from them. They do have some significant fire activity within that area. We've shared a lot of resources and sent them a number of resources to assist them with that firefight. I know that they do have a lot of resources engaged within that and have a plan of attack in which they are protecting that area and have active structure defense going within the Genesee area. So a little outside of what our oversight is and our purview with this team. However, that is what we are aware of and what we do know what's going on in the Genesee area. But yes, they do have quite a bit of fire activity there. More into the west zone, the question, does Prospect Point have a fire? And I assume that's the Prospect Peak area, just up towards Old Station, and there is no fire in that area. The fire currently is within the park. And then just outside the park, the burn operation in Division, Quebec. So again, it's very deceptive at times based on topography, the background, smoke conditions, lighting conditions, all these different variables that can create a perspective that when you're looking at a smoke, at times it may look a lot closer than it is, or you may have it a line that it's in a certain drainage or mountaintop or something, and especially at a distance. So a lot of times we get these reports and ask these questions about that, and I will assure you that no, there's nothing outside the park boundary up into that area where we are currently constructing all of our contingency lines. So if that's the area of concern or question, no, there is no fire activity going on there. Another question was within an area, the pocket, there was, I believe, the Willow Creek area. So that area is within the pocket, and the fire is basically burning on the ridge tops around that and on the side of the ridges, mountain tops in that particular area. And so it has not come down into the drainage or the creek drainage at all. We do have, like I've said earlier, we do have direct constructed line all the way around that with dozer line, and we are continuing to get in there and mop up. And the question was, do we have resources? Yes, we have a lot of resources in there. Heavy equipment, hand crews, fire engines, is just some very tough, rugged country and parts of that make it very difficult for us to get a good hold on it and get to be able to put our engines in not drivable areas. So we have to put in hose lays and very laborious tasks to get that mopped up. But yes, that is an area that is one of our focuses, one of our priorities for the extinguishment of that fire and protection of that community. So we are having a lot of good success in that. We haven't seen any huge runs or anything of that nature, any spotting conditions within that pocket area. And we, like I said, we do have a lot of direct line and continuing extinguishment within that area.
Thank you, Chief. That's going to conclude our questions for this evening. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for their time this evening. I'd also like to thank you for joining us. Our next scheduled incident briefing will be on Thursday, August 26th at 7 p.m. It'll be streamed live here on the Facebook Lassen MODOC page, as well as on YouTube. Thank you, good night, and be safe.